Hello everyone, and welcome to Hill Street. Today's story is, I was asked to watch my friend's grandma for a few days, and now the smell of tea makes me sick. If you end up enjoying this story, please leave a like, and if you enjoy hearing stories from me, please subscribe and become a resident of Hill Street and let me know how I'm doing in the comments. Now, let's get to this nightmare. I was once asked to watch over my friend's grandma. I know it sounds weird, but I was very close to the family. The family consisted of my friend Richard and his mom and dad, who I remember calling Mr. and Mrs. Jones. Now, there was one other family member that wasn't around that often, the grandma. I never learned her name since she was almost never around. She was this lanky old woman who had snow-white hair and dark, caved-in eyes. I remember her always smelling like tea. I never liked her. I don't know why, but she always made me super uncomfortable. I had maybe seen the grandma a few times, so I found it weird when my friend said his mom asked me to watch the grandma. She apparently had bad sleepwalking episodes and didn't want her hurting herself at night. All I had to do was check on her in the early morning to make sure she was okay. I agreed, since it wasn't supposed to be a hard job. Rich's family left for vacation and left the grandma at the house to her own devices. The next morning, I went to check on her, and she was sitting on the couch watching TV. I stopped and decided to talk to her since I felt bad about her being stuck alone. "Hello, ma'am. You doing okay?" I asked. The old woman turned her sunken eyes to me. "Yes? You're Richard's friend?" Her voice sounded gargled almost, like she had some liquid in her mouth. "Yes, ma'am. Do you need anything? I could make you something to eat or drink while I'm here. Wouldn't want you to have to go through all the hassle." I stood next to the couch. The woman shook her head no before she turned her head back to the TV, which I had realized had been off. She stared at the black screen as if mesmerized by some amazing performance before her. That earthly and sweet smell of tea lingered in the air around her stiff form. I said my goodbye quickly and left. As I was leaving, I got that overwhelming fear that someone was right behind me. That fear that yells at you to run or turn. But I instead walked back to my house. My house was right next to hers, so it wasn't a far walk. The entire time, though, that fear, which ever so slightly ran its nails across my spine, stayed with me until I stepped into my house. The next day was the same, and so were the next few days. Check on Grandma, stand there awkwardly as she watched a black screen, get a headache from the tea smell, and resist the urge to run back to my house. One day, though, I decided to check on her a bit earlier. I knocked on the door before entering the home. I looked in the living room and found that Grandma wasn't there. I walked into the living room and looked at the spot on the couch where she normally sat. The area was absolutely soaked with something, and it was caved in. The fear was scratching at my spine again. I took a few steps forward and was instantly sent back by the smell of rotting, waterlogged meat. It smelled as if a cow had been thrown in a ditch after death and allowed it to rot in a foot of water. I gagged and quickly backed up. Instead of sticking around, I ran out of the house. I was so scared that I didn't check on the grandma for a day or two. When I finally worked up the courage to check on her again, she sat in the disfigured spot on the couch, watching a blank screen. I approached her. "Sorry for not checking on you, ma'am. I was busy with school." I lied. She didn't turn or do anything. She stayed laid back on the couch. I think Rich and everyone should be back tomorrow." I took another step forward. It was at this moment the woman turned her head towards me. The skin on the back of her neck stuck to the couch and ripped away with her movement. No, not ripped. Melted. Her skin melted into the thick goop as it pulled away from her body. Her eyes were so far sunken into her skull that I couldn't see them anymore. The same soaked meat smell hit me. I would prefer the sweet, nauseating smell of tea over this. It became even worse as the grandma stood and the flesh on her arms and legs sagged off and stuck to the fabric of the couch. As she took a shakily step, more globs of meat fell from the inside of her dress and onto the floor. A almost clear yellow liquid and blood began to leak out of her pores and from her open wounds, from where meat had slid off her bones. Her snow-white hair fell in clumps like dead birds falling from the sky as the flesh on her skull began to sag and fall. She was now standing in a pile of her own flesh. I was in absolute shock in what I was seeing. I remember I knew I needed to run, but my legs refused to move. The soggy humanoid figure then turned and tried to get to me, but slipped on a pile of melted skin. The thing hit the ground and its bones detached from each other as the nerves and tendons between them melted. I don't remember what happened after that thing became a lump of melted flesh and bone. I remember falling over. I think I passed out. I also remember speaking with Rich as police investigated what had happened. Everyone was horrified and baffled by this old woman seemingly just melting for no apparent reason. The police ruled it was a suicide to keep the public away, and Rich soon moved after the incident. I still can't comprehend what happened that morning, but the smell of tea now makes me sick.